Hi everyone. Okay, so welcome to our third video where we go over our banking CLI application. Okay, so today we'll be working on setting up our database helpers. So in the last class, or in the last video, we actually created our database entities. Okay, and we're able to test to see if we can add records or modify them, and it worked, right? Alright, so we'll be doing our setting up our database helpers, okay, in this video. So first I will create a file. So let me go to my terminal. Let's go to okay, so I'll create a folder called banking CLI, and we'll create a folder. So we'll create a file where we'll have all our features. So we're just going to use one file for now, and as we're working, we'll determine if to split functionality across different files or maintain everything in a single file. So for now, we're going to use a single file to manage that. Right, so this is where our project will be. So first we want to create some database helpers to help us connect our database. Okay, so first thing I would do would be to create a database helper class. Now in this class we're going to create one private static property called PDO. It's going to be null by default, and we could type it. We could say PDO and make it nullable here. Yeah, we could do that. Okay, but this works not all versions of PHP. I think from 8.2 or 8.1 if I'm correct. Okay, but for now let's make it like that. Then we're going to create a static function which we'll use to retrieve a connection instance. Okay, so the idea of the reason behind the static function is we want to, we don't want to create an instance of the database helper class to be able to access that function. So we don't want to do something like maybe db helper equals new database helper, and then db helper followed by maybe the name of the function. Let's say it's called get PDO instance. Let me just use this. Yeah, so we don't want to do this anytime we want to get a PDO instance. Okay, want to be able to do something like database helper get PDO instance. So for us to do that, we need to make the method static. Right now it's an instance method, right? So we're going to qualify this as static. So say public static function, and we're going to specify the type we are returning. So we're saying this function is going to return an instance of PDO. Okay, so let's do PDO. Right, sorry, PDO. Yeah, and there's a political party called PDP, but it's not in Nigeria, but there's not a a programming thing for political parties. So that's by the way. So notice we are not saying null. Okay, we want to ensure that we are actually returning a PDO instance. So if it doesn't return it, it should fail somehow. Okay, so let's create that instance. So the first thing we want to do is we want to check to see if we have an instance that has been created already. Okay, if we have that instance, then we will return that instance. Okay, so that we don't have to recreate the connection again. We just reuse an existing connection. Think of it as checking to see if you have a phone number stored. Okay, if you have it, then you can just call it, but if it's not stored, then you have to fully like dial the phone number. Okay, so that's the idea. If you're sending a mail, if you have the mail in your contacts or in your recently contacted list, you can easily retrieve that, but if you don't, then you have to write it fully. Okay, so we'll first check if we have an instance here. Okay, so here we're setting it by default to null. Okay, so I think I'll just proceed to type it so that we can ensure that it's only instances of PDO that can be stored in this PDO static property, right? So let's do a check. So say if self PDO, and okay, let me just do this. So if self PDO is not equal to null, then we can return that instance of PDO we have stored, right? Yeah. Now another advantage of having to type it, okay, would mean that it might not be null, but we could store another value in there, and then it won't do what we intended to do. So let's say at some point in the program, in this static property, we put, let's say, an array, for example. Now if we do this, okay, if we do this, nothing prevents this from not working. Okay, let's see PDO, right? So return a PDO instance. Okay, and now let me do, since I already made it static, so let's say we are accessing that PDO object here, right? And let's do PHP main.php. Okay, so you say, so we can see the return value must be of type PDO array return. So here we've done a validation check for the type, so we're ensuring that you can only return a PDO instance from this method, right? Which is good. But let's say we remove this. Let's see what will happen. Let's say we remove the return type. Okay, and then we do this. Now it worked, but we don't really want an array. Let's say we want to access a PDO method, for example. Let's say we want to do I think it's prepare statement, prepare. So let's say I want to do prepare, for example, on this PDO instance. So we're expecting a prepare method to be in this PDO instance. Okay, but because this is not a PDO instance at this point, it's an array, it's going to fail. So it will stop us from attempting this, but as soon as we attempt it, it will fail because we don't have prepare method in an array. Okay, all right, so we got the error. But if we made it here, if we see this PDO can only take an instance of PDO object or nothing, then this will fail here. So we won't even get to this point where we are attempting to execute prepare on the PDO instance, because this won't be a PDO instance. Okay, so let's try. Okay, so it failed because we can't send an array to a PDO or to something that can only take a null or a PDO instance. So wherever possible, make sure to use type validations, right? Okay, so let's, how do we create this PDO instance, right? So we need a few things. We need a host, we need a port. So for ports, since this is an int, use that. So for hosts, since I'm hosting this locally, I'll just set localhost. Then we need a database name, which could just say database. So if I'm correct, I think we named it banking CLI DB. Yeah. So banking CLI DB. If it doesn't connect, we would do something about it, right? So then we have a host. So we would say, user. Okay, so I think, okay, it's named to tech, and then our password, which is to tech 321, I think. All right. So with this, we can create our DSN, so a database connection string, which would be, so I'm using PostgreSQL. So if you're using MySQL, you might want to do this. I'm using PostgreSQL, so I'll do PGSQL followed by host. Right. Okay, have to restart. Okay, that's fine. Right. Yeah, restart. Okay, so host. So host would be our host, which we have here. Then we're going to set our port, which we have here. So I'm using string interpolation. Notice the double quotes. Note you can do this with single quotes. Yeah. Okay. Then we're going to set our DB name. So DB name, which would be database, which is here, right? Now also remember, this is the default port for PostgreSQL. Okay, so if you are hosting your database server on a different port, make sure to change it here. Note this is also optional, so if you choose to eliminate this section from your connection string, it just uses the default port, which is this. Okay, but please make sure to specify it explicitly. Yeah. So with this, we can create a PDO instance. We can say self PDO equals new PDO. So we'll pass our DSN, we'll pass our username, we'll pass our password. Okay, so with this we have our PDO instance, and then we can return that. Okay, so this ensures that if we have a connection, okay, if we don't have a connection, if we have a connection, we return it. If we don't have, we establish that connection, save it into this, so that the next time it just comes here, right? And then we return that instance. So let's check. Let's do a bit of echo here. No connection available, creating a new one. Alright, do an end of line here, and then let's attempt to run this. Okay, so we have an exception which says the server is currently not running. So let me fix that. Startups, playground. Yeah, so I think I have so I'm using Docker to run to manage my database instance locally, my database server. So I'll start that up. Hope I do have enough memory. Right. Okay, so let me start up. Okay, so I have my database server, so let's try again. Yeah, it's okay. So we don't have a connection available, creating a new one. Okay, and then we have this error, prepare query cannot be empty, so we need to pass an actual query. So let's check to see if this is working. I think I can do exec instead, and then get yeah, so let's see, let's do select of I think, okay, we have an account table, so let's do that. Okay, so if you're only trying to execute one statement, there will be no need to put the end line, right? Okay, so it works. Right, it might be hard to test this because I always showing creating a new one, but let's try to get it again twice. So right, so it only did this once because the next time it has executed it, it has been able to return what we have here. So maybe we can add a bit of echo. Okay, let's say existing connection found. Okay, yeah, let's say existing database connection found. And this one could be database connection available. So let's try that. Okay, so the first time there wasn't any database connection, so it created a new one. Second time it was able to find a cached database connection and it returned that instead. Alright, so here's our database helper for now. We might need some other methods eventually to help us execute, maybe select statements, delete statements, okay, update statements, okay, insert statements. So we will be creating them, okay, soon, so just watch out for that. Right, so this will be all for the database helper. Right, so in the next class we might create the other methods, though I prefer to, for each entity, I prefer creating an entity class, okay, that is also responsible for working with its own records instead of having like a generic maybe method that we can reuse, okay, for any table, okay, for any type of statement. Okay, it makes it easy for us to it makes it more organized, makes it easy for us to change things without affecting other things. Okay, so I will maintain a simple database helper. Its job is just to give us a connection to the database, and it's up to the entity classes to handle how they would get data from database or insert data into the database or update per their respective tables. Okay, so that'll be all for now. I'll see you guys in the next video.